The real reason the heavyweight division feared him. Look at their eyes. Not now, but then. When they stood across the ring from the Eastern assassin, something changed. It wasn't just respect. It was cold, paralyzing fear. People talk about Tyson's power. They talk about Ali's speed. But Larry Holmes, he didn't just beat you. He broke you. Piece by piece, inch by inch. He wasn't the people's champion. He was the man who made the giants tremble in the dark. Tonight, we aren't talking about stats. We're talking about the nightmare that ruled the 80s. Look closely. What do you see? Most fans look for the knockout hook. They want the big overhand right. But the 50-year-old purist? He looks at the left hand. He looks at that piston. The greatest jab in the history of the heavyweight division. It wasn't just a punch. It was a message. Larry Holmes didn't just hit you, he blinded you. He disrupted your rhythm. He took away your oxygen. Imagine standing there, or trying to breathe, and every time you blink, pop. Your head snaps back. Your nose starts to leak. Your eyes swell shut. It was surgical, cold, calculated. The Eastern assassin didn't need to brawl. He was a master of distance. He kept you at the end of that left hand like a dog on a short leash. You wanted to get close? Pop. You wanted to reset? Pop. Think about the greats. Ronaldo Snipes, Jerry Cooney, even a fading Ali. They all felt it. That stinging, repeating nightmare. It felt like being hit with a wet brick over and over again. But here is the real secret. The part that made the division tremble. It wasn't just the speed of the jab. It was the arrogance of it. Larry would look you in the eye while he did it. He was telling you, I own this ring. I own your face. And there is absolutely nothing you can do to stop me. He didn't need 12 rounds to beat you. By round 4, most men were already broken mentally. Their game plan was gone. And their confidence was in the dirt. They were just surviving. That left hand was a wall made of bone and leather, and once Larry established that jab, the fight was over. The rest was just a formality, a slow, painful walk to the inevitable. In the 80s, if you were a heavyweight, you didn't fear Larry's power. You feared his control. You feared the fact that you couldn't even get close enough to touch him. He made the toughest men in the world look like amateurs. And he did it with one hand. September 29th, 1979, Las Vegas. The air was thick. The tension? You could cut it with a knife. Across the ring stood Ernie Shavers, the hardest puncher to ever lace up a pair of gloves. Even Ali said Ernie hit like a truck. In the 7th round it happened, a devastating overhand right. It didn't just land, it exploded. Larry's head snapped, his legs turned to jelly. He hit the canvas like a sack of stones. The world stopped. The commentators were already writing the obituary of his title reign. If you were there or watching it on a grainy TV screen back then, you knew. That was it. No man survives an Ernie Shavers bomb. But then, something happened that still gives me chills. Larry Holmes didn't just wake up. He didn't just crawl. He rose like a ghost. His eyes were vacant for a second, then flash. The fire was back. He didn't just stand up. He started fighting back. He didn't run. He didn't clinch. He stood his ground. This is the real reason the division feared him. It's one thing to fight a man who is fast. It's another to fight a man who can't be knocked out. How do you beat a guy who takes your best shot, the one that would kill a normal human being, and just stares back at you? That night, Larry didn't just beat Ernie. He broke the spirit of every heavyweight watching from the sidelines. They realized that to take the belt from the Eastern assassin, you didn't just need a punch. You needed a miracle. You had to kill him. And Larry Holmes, he wasn't ready to die. Not that night, not ever. He showed the world that his chin was made of granite and his heart was made of something even tougher. He wasn't just a technician anymore. He was a survivor, a warrior who looked into the abyss and told it to move out of his way. When you know a man can walk through fire, you don't just respect him. You fear him, because you realize that no matter how hard you hit him, he's coming back for more. Imagine being the successor to a god. Muhammad Ali wasn't just a boxer, he was the world. And Larry? Larry was the sparring partner, the shadow, the guy who caught Ali's sweat on his shirt for years. When they finally met in 1980, it wasn't a fight. It was a funeral. Larry didn't want to do it. He cried after the fight. He loved Ali. But the world? They didn't care about Larry's tears. They hated him for winning. They hated him for being the man who finally silenced the greatest. And that's when the Eastern assassin became truly dangerous. He realized he was never going to be loved like Ali. He was never going to be the darling of the media. So, he embraced the villain. He fed on the booze. He took all that rejection, all that disrespect, and he turned it into a cold, hard shell. This is the mental war. When you fought Larry Holmes, you weren't just fighting a boxer. You were fighting a man with a chip on his shoulder the size of a mountain. He fought like he had something to prove every single second. He fought with a quiet, burning rage. The heavyweights of the 80s didn't just fear his jab. They feared his mind. He was grumpy. He was honest. He was old school before the term even existed. He didn't care about your feelings. He didn't care about being a superstar. He just wanted to hurt you for doubting him. He walked into the ring with a scowl that said, "I've been overlooked my whole life, and tonight, you're going to pay for it." How do you fight a man who finds his power in your hatred? You can't break his spirit, because his spirit was forged in the fire of being second best for too long. By the time the bell rang, Larry had already won the mental battle. He wasn't there to make friends. He was there to survive. And in that survival, so he became the most avoided man in boxing history. Look at the heavyweight division today. You see the glitz. You see the social media followers. You see the million-dollar outfits. But do you see that heart? Do you see that jab? Larry Holmes didn't need a persona. He didn't need to shout to be heard. His silence was louder than any hype man. The Eastern assassin retired with a record that most legends can only dream of. 20 successful title defenses, 7 years of absolute dominance. But his real legacy isn't in the numbers. It's in the scars of the men who tried to take his crown. They feared him because he was the last of a dying breed. A man who learned his craft in smoky gyms, sparring with the greatest to ever live, and then surpassed them in his own quiet, brutal way. Today, we look back, and we finally get it. We didn't appreciate him when he was there. We were too busy looking for the next Ali. But time has a way of clearing the fog. Now, when we see those old tapes, the snapping jab, the recovery against shavers, the cold stare, we realize what we had. We had a king who didn't ask for a throne. He built it himself. Larry Holmes was the bridge between the golden age and the era of giants. He was the man who stood alone in the storm and never blinked. So next time you watch a heavyweight fight and you see a lazy jab or a fighter who quits too early, think of Larry. And think of the man who showed us that a champion isn't someone who never falls. It's the man who gets up, wipes the blood, and keeps punching until the world finally, painfully learns to respect him. The division didn't just fear him. They knew he was the truth.